DeMeco Ryans spoke to the media today on a Monday, which is like a Tuesday because there's a Saturday game. He was live, which I was surprised because there was talk of him potentially Zooming because of the national championship game. Mostly, I'm just glad that the game is on Monday because I did not want this to be too much of a distraction for Nico Collins coming off a brilliant performance on Saturday night. So Nico Collins can just go ahead and enjoy all the festivities. Maybe they get a championship, all that. But DeMeco answered some questions. First question today, in case we're not able to hear the question from the reporter all that well, was on if he's worried about the run defense after the Colts game. Jonathan Taylor just went the hell off.
Defense was mainly tackling, and you made.
Okay, that's John McClain. I want to be sure, see if we can hear him. What's up, Drew?
Nico, you told us after the game that the run defense was mainly tackling, and you made a schematic change to control them in the fourth quarter. Are you worried about the run defense after one bad game?
So John asked if DeMeco is worried about the run defense after one bad game, and the Texans' run defense is top 3 in the league, and they went and gave Jonathan Taylor the best game he's had all season. Jonathan Taylor hadn't had over 100 yards yet this season, so I've got some thoughts on that. Let's see what DeMeco has to say.
Yeah, our tackling was not good versus the Colts, and it showed up. Right, not concerned about what happened there in the running game. I just know we can play better overall. When it comes to how we play our technique up front, starting with the defensive line, also with our linebackers and second-level defenders, like being in better position to tackle and swarming. We had one too many times where it's just one guy, and Taylor, also awesome player, and we knew it going in, made one guy miss, and he was able to create explosives on us time after time. So we just have to be better of swarming the football, but it starts with tackling, right? It wasn't good enough, and we have to improve it this week.
Okay, that keyword explosives is something that pops up again and again and again. The whole Kyle Shanahan philosophy in San Francisco, both offensively and defensively, and this goes back to Kubiak and Mike Shanahan, is all about getting explosives on offense, in the run game, in the pass game. And then on defense, especially over these last couple of years in San Francisco, they've evolved into, okay, limit explosives on offense. The Texans had limited teams to explosive plays in the run play at the 6th best rate in the league. They've been really good at limiting explosive run plays. It's the pass plays where they've struggled, and I know that's got to be driving DeMeco crazy. For the most part, it's been okay versus the run. I'm not particularly worried about the Browns, as Browns fans and media will tell you, and we saw a couple weeks ago, the Browns have a hard time running the football. Since Joe Flacco came back, it's all about play action, and they're kind of like the Texans in that they will commit to the run, and they're going to keep running even if it's at 2 yards a clip because they need to set up that play action. So for this particular matchup, I'm not worried about it. I think for the other part of what happened in the Colts game was you saw very early on where Pittman got those 3 receptions. They had to start limiting that. They had to clog up some of those zones, and they started worrying more about limiting that. They didn't want to get this onslaught of Michael Pittman down the field at 10 and 20 yards at a clip. The backers could have done a better job of it. The RPOs messed them up a little bit, but they were out of position. I'm not worried about it for this week. It might have exposed some glitches on for future matchups if the Texans make it past this week, but overall should be all right.
What happened
For this week, I am worried, as we should be, because we saw it a couple weeks ago. The play action by the Browns, it's really good.
Yeah, fourth quarter, I felt like guys got more knocked back. We were able to make some stops there in the run game, but overall, it wasn't us in the run game, and that's why I think the Colts stayed after it. Right, we had a lot of leaky yardage in the run game, so we have to fix that going against the Browns this week. They're a really good offensive line, really good run unit, so we have to be prepared to stop the run.
Yeah, they will commit to the run, and you got to stop them. The Texans just have to avoid those mistakes on the back end. The other thing about the fourth quarter was I'll defend Shane Steichen. Look, at that point in the game on that final drive, well, almost the final drive, Jonathan Taylor wasn't running well. He got stuffed on half his runs there. He had just gotten stuffed on 3rd and 2 for 1 yard, and he had a bum ankle. You know, there was speculation he wasn't even coming back in the game. So I think the Texans, by also playing more aggressively there, they walked Petrie up a bunch in that series. It was a good counterbalance to what the Texans had been doing defensively a lot. And then third down was just, they were incredible on third down. They held the Colts to 1 for 11 on third downs. Next question was about on how he would describe his leadership approach.
From day one, how did you feel like you instilled your leadership style, your standard as far as what you expected from the guys, and how would you describe your leadership approach?
Yeah, for me, when you talk about my leadership approach, it's all about positive reinforcement. It's all about positive energy. It's all about just getting better one day at a time, and that's what I tried to instill in all of our guys. Is just a get better mentality, and I think our guys have taken that on. We've gotten better from day one. Each and every week we've gotten better. Always things to improve on, things to clean up. But all I want our guys is just continue to do their best and strive to get better every single day.
The thing I'd say about DeMeco's approach is, yes, positivity, but I don't, it's not a contrived positivity. And I don't mean to say that coaches who are positive all the time are phony about it or anything. But maybe contrived isn't the right word, but I think it's DeMeco's personality. I think that's the way he's always been. He's always been a guy that's just about moving forward. And because of that, I don't think there's any chafing by people who might suspect that it's all a charade or that at some point he's going to bite you. There's coaches out there who really try genuinely hard to be positive, but like deep down they're just cynical bastards and they can't help it. With DeMeco, like as he was as a player, I think he sees obstacles, he figures out the way to attack those obstacles, and then there you have it. So it's almost as much practical as it is positive. And those things kind of, the more you go along in life, you start to realize like, oh, okay, it's a lot easier to be positive about things when I'm practical about things.
Do you feel like this team has exceeded expectations by making the playoffs and being the seaside?
And for me,
Basically the question was about making the playoffs and what the expectations are.
what are the expectations, right? Every team that lines up on every team that starts the season, your expectations have to be to get into the playoffs and have an opportunity to win it all. That's why you play the game. And, I don't know any other expectation. When you're a competitor, right, that's why you compete. And that's, we continue to do our best and work the right way, and we'll have an opportunity, and that's what our guys did. And we're here with our opportunity now.
Yeah, I couldn't hear the exact question, but I'm guessing about just, did you have the expectation to make the playoffs? And, DeMeco was never, he's never flat out told everybody what the goals for the team were or anything. Those are all in-house discussions. But I think it's pretty safe to say that he and CJ and Will Anderson had higher expectations than a lot of other people.
DeMeco, what does it mean to you to have orchestrated such a remarkable turnaround in just 1 year, especially as a first-year coach?
I think that was Christy Reekin asked, what does it mean to him to orchestrate such a turnaround, especially as a first-year head coach?
Yeah, for me, I'm proud of our guys. It's our first year, so I don't know about the turnaround. It's our first year together as the 2023 Texans, and our guys have done a great job this year.
Okay, this is one thing DeMeco's been awesome about, is that he refuses to talk about last year before that, anything as far as a turnaround or anything goes. And I honestly, I think when it comes to just creating change in an organization, I've seen this so many times. I've been a part of it one time with a new head coach where it almost created like an us versus them mentality. And what happened was you distance a lot of like really good people that might still be in the organization. I think there's a tendency sometimes for the new people to come in to act like, oh yeah, well, we're doing it this way and this is the right way to do it, which is insulting to the people who are already there, as well as, good people who may have departed. And I can remember some coaches when Gary Kubiak came in saying the same thing. Some of them were gone within a couple of years. I can remember when Bill O'Brien came in, it was all about how couldn't believe there were people saying they couldn't believe that Kubiak was running things the way they could. And they just, DeMeco hasn't wasted any time with that. Again, that's more of just that pragmatic positivity that you don't waste time talking smack about people that have no bearing on what you're doing right now. God, I love DeMeco. He's just the best.
When you, even though the team is going to be a little bit more healthier playing against the Browns this time around, when you go back and you take a look at the film, what are some of the intangibles you feel that this team needs to improve in order to advance to the next round?
Okay, I believe Cody asked, given that the team will be healthier this time around? Going back and watching the film, what can you take away from it? Something along those lines?
For us, looking back at our first game versus the Browns, it was a lot of self-inflicted penalties. We made big plays. They were negated by penalties or just mishaps on our part. So, again, we have to play clean football versus a really good team. You can't go out and make mistakes, right, or they'll capitalize on it, and they've shown that time after time. And that's on the defensive side. We gave up too many explosive passes. And Amari had an outstanding game. Watching it again, he had some of the best catches I've seen all year, right? Even though guys were in coverage and in position, he still made unbelievable catches. He had an outstanding game. So we have to be in position to cover him better. We have to be able to make plays, right, to get off the field on third down as well.
Okay, few things there. I'd say three main things. One, penalties. Yeah. They played so clean last week. They were so clean. And then this Colts game comes along, and they had 11, 12, 13, 29, 38, 57 penalties. I don't know what it was. I know there were a couple too many false starts, which is driving me slowly insane. I don't mind the aggressive penalties. I don't mind when hands to the face you should be able to not do that, but that's an aggressive penalty. But the false starts and some of the substitution issues and stuff that they've had, that's going to be a focal point this week. The mental errors on big plays. I had a healthy carrot earlier. The mental errors on big plays, including the very first play of scrimmage to Amari Cooper in that Browns game, they've got to clean that up. Luckily, I think the memories of that are really sharp and crisp. So hopefully that'll be a motivator. And then what was the third thing you mentioned? Just Amari Cooper making plays. I think that's you cannot take away from the fact that, yes, the Texans had some big mental errors, but my God, Joe Flacco to Amari Cooper, Joe Flacco to David Njoku in the end zone. Like, there were just some thread the needle into tight coverage and tiny windows. Like, you have to be physically that much better. You just have to be physically that much sharper as well as mentally. And again, I think maybe the best advantage the Texans have going, aside from getting CJ Stroud back, is that memory is very, very fresh. We've seen this team at times, get sloppy, then the next week come back and be sharp as hell. And then maybe they get a little cocky and they get sloppy again. Like, obviously, you don't have time to get sloppy in this week, and you got to keep that heat on.
Was anything in the Colts game from y'all's pass defense and y'all's coverage that you feel like y'all can apply moving forward into the playoffs, specifically?
So Brandon Scott had asked basically about the pass defense versus the Colts.
With our pass defense, we just have to continue to play together, right? It starts with our guys up front putting pressure on the quarterback, but also at the back end, guys just being where they're supposed to be, playing off of each other, right, and just being great communicators on the back end. And we have that, right? We have an opportunity.
Okay, so again, I don't want to be overly dramatic about the game plan or the adjustments that the Texans made versus the Colts, but the thought that came to mind was the Giants versus the Bills in the Super Bowl, when the Giants flat out said, all right, you know what? We're going to let Thurman Thomas get his, and we've just got to limit what Jim Kelly and this K-Gun offense can do. And that was the effective strategy. You look up at the end of this game, and despite the fact that Jonathan Taylor had almost 200 yards rushing, Gardner Minshew had 130 yards passing, and the Colts only scored 17 points. It was bend but don't break to the extreme, but they showed up on third downs. They held the Colts to 1 for 11 on third downs. So as painful as it was to watch, the Texans, I think, through a combination of getting aggressive on that final drive, but then also Jonathan Taylor having a bum ankle, which happens when a team's playing you physically, I suppose. I'll take credit for that. It was like they did it. They also, the pass rush was more effective than I think the sack totals showed. And they also at times only rushed 3 and dropped the bunch back into coverage. So it was a much more effective, though painful, game plan than I thought at first upon the first watch. And going back and watching, I was impressed with some of the stuff they did.
DeMeco, so many of your players have talked about the level of trust that they have in one another, the belief that they have in one another. How fundamental was that to what you tried to instill in this team from day one? And if it was, how did you get that done to the point where their trust in one another is now 100%?
Yeah, trust comes from when you see each other execute, right? You see the work that guys put in throughout the week. You have to earn that trust, and that's one thing I'm all about is earning everything that you get. You have to earn it, right? Whether it's a playing time, whatever it is, you have to earn it. Playing time, trust, you go earn it, and you show it by the way you practice, and guys see that, and that spurs the belief in one another because guys see each other execute on a day-to-day basis. They see each other make plays in games, and that drives that belief in our entire team.
You know, I think the other big part of it is the fact that both Will Anderson and CJ Stroud are all about creating that collegiate environment. And I've talked about that on here before. My co-host Sean Pendergast on the morning show made a really good point about just, I think, maybe those guys' backgrounds. As vocal as CJ Stroud and Will Anderson have been as rookies, and they've been encouraged by the veterans to be vocal leaders, those guys just had just about the best college experience you could have. You know, CJ would have loved to win a national championship, but it's hard to get that college environment in the NFL. And CJ, most of you know, CJ invites different teammates over for dinner just about every night of the week, has a very tight-knit quarterbacks room in there where a lot of feelings of competitiveness or whatever just are flat out not an issue. And I think that goes a long way too. So CJ is a big part of that, on being able to, in the NFL, create a closeness and a bond on a team where in any given year you're going to lose 50% of those guys. It's hard to do. And having a guy like CJ that's that committed to it, like genuinely committed to it, it goes a long, long way. There's some quarterbacks out there that they aren't good natural leaders, or at least they haven't worked to develop themselves into natural leaders. CJ is 100% worked at it, and that's part of the product of what you're seeing.
Can you talk about any of the injury situation, anything new on Noah Brown or Charleston Grenard?
So Matt Musil asked if there were any developments in the injury situations.
Nothing new right now. We'll see where our guys end up by the end of the week. Hopefully we get some guys back. Hopefully they continue to progress. But we would love to have some of our guys back to help us. We need all the guys we can get. We would love to have them back.
Okay, the Browns defense, I just checked to be sure they're still really good. There's very few places to attack. Like, honestly, you look at their depth chart, like, I guess, when they're in their base defense, like, one of their linebackers isn't that great in coverage. So you need all hands on deck. And I know that Nico Collins was just absolutely brilliant versus the Colts. I don't think that you can depend on getting that exact same type of performance versus this Browns defense. The thing that I liked about Robert Woods early in the year was that he was a security blanket for DeMeco. He was exactly where he needed to be. DeMeco could throw it to him, whether he was covered or not, and Robert Woods was going to catch the ball. He'd get 0 yards after the catch, but they'd get first downs. Remember, like, a huge percentage of Robert Woods' receptions in those first 2 games were for first downs. He had 12 receptions in the first 2 games, and then as Tank Dell emerged, those numbers started to dwindle a little bit, which was fine. I think right now that can help a lot versus this Browns defense, especially.
Can you compare this title to your first one in 2011?
He wanted to compare this AFC South title to his first one in 2007.
It's a special one. It's special to win the division, right? And that's always the goal, right? You win a division, you're in the playoffs, so that's a goal each and every year, right? Just to get started into the into the postseason. So, we're proud of that accomplishment, right? Proud of the work that our guys put in throughout the year, and they went out and they earned it, right? It wasn't pretty all throughout the year, but they earned it, and I'm happy the way we earned it. There were a lot of tough, gritty wins, a lot of learning lessons and some losses, but we've grown throughout the year, and I feel like we're much better. I talked about all throughout the year of us learning how to win. I feel like we've done that, and we have valuable experience, right, that'll carry us throughout these playoffs.
So, I don't know. Let's see. Was this game? This was the first one in a while in like 8 games. It didn't come down to the very last series. So they made it a little less close. I guess technically you could say it came down to whatever. I was barely watching at that point. I think that, but it was certainly a one-score. It was a one-score game. That part they've learned. As far as division titles and how special they can be, I've long been accused of being kind of cynical and kind of a Scrooge about winning division titles, because it can get to a point almost like going to a bowl game where, oh, great, your team was 6-5 and went to a bowl game. Good for them. Sometimes like different division titles mean different things. If you're in a really weak division, it's not that big a deal. This might be the most excited I've ever been about a division title, whether it was one that I played in or one that I've covered or been a fan of the team. It was so far out of the realm of possibilities, for the most part, of realistic possibilities at the beginning of the season. You go back to a few weeks ago, remember, and the Jaguars had a 96% chance of making the playoffs and whatever percentage chance of winning the division. And all of a sudden it evaporated for the Jaguars, and the Texans, without CJ Stroud for 2 of those games, figured out a way to get it done. This is my favorite one by far. Mind you, I played in the old AFC Central. Browns fans that are here via the algorithm know this. 6 damn teams. 6 teams. Except I don't think I ever won the AFC Central with 6 teams. But still, 5 teams. 5-team champ. I'd hold on to this year's division title T-shirt that I got. Usually I would just give them to oversized needy children, like 6'5", 310-pound needy children that could wear my T-shirts. Next question.
How did you take in yesterday's game, the Titans-Jaguars game? Did y'all already take care of business the day before?
As Brandon Scott asking, how did you take in the Jaguars-Titans game yesterday, in which you cinched the division?
Set the scene. Like, what were you doing? How did you take it in? What were your emotions once it was 3 y'all in the division?
Yeah, for me, we were just sitting at home with the family, and my wife and kids were sitting on the couch watching the game, just like everyone else. And, when I turned the game on, it was kind of like, I think maybe late in the third quarter, and the Jags started making a few plays. And I said, maybe I should turn this off. But stayed with it, kept watching the game, and Tennessee, they played a really good game there, made some plays to win, and we're excited. I'm jumping up and down with my kids, excited, that we were able to win the division thanks to the Titans getting the win. So excited, man, jumping around, just an exciting moment for me and my family to share that together.
Derrick Henry, 19 attempts for 153 yards, 8.1 yards per carry versus the Jaguars. Mind you, this was after the Texans last week held him to 42 yards on 12 carries. And 2 weeks before that, the Texans held him to, I still can't believe this, 9 yards on 16 carries. It was 0.56 yards per carry in that first game. So Derrick Henry came up big for the Texans. Mike Vrabel, I think, availed himself, is that the right word, or it was an atonement for the year he was defensive coordinator for the Texans, and it was one of the worst defenses in the league. So good for the Titans. Thank you very much.
How did the team, I guess, everybody saw when you guys split the division, but what was that message amongst the team when it was clear that you guys did win the division? What was that message among the entire?
Hold on one second. This is in the transcripts. I couldn't quite hear it. What was his message to the team? I think maybe after they found out about the Titans game.
Yeah, there was no message from me, right? It's you win a division. All right, now it's everybody know, okay, now who we're playing. I think that's what everybody was focused on, who would be the next opponent, where we have to go. Right, that's where everybody's focus was. But the message, man, it's back to work. Right, it's back to work. Let's put the work in. We know we have the Browns coming in here, really tough opponent. We got to go put the work in and find a way to win, whatever it takes.
So yeah, they didn't have like a moment where everybody was in the cafeteria all watching together or anything. I don't know. How would you guys have felt about that? Would that have felt like kind of Bush League if you're sitting there as a team? Why? Nah, I always like it. That's like kids getting their scholarships and stuff. That's always a good one. It's not up there with, kid gets special glasses that allow him to see color for the first time. It's definitely not up there with a guy returning home from Afghanistan is actually the umpire. It is kids' little league game and surprises them. So it's nothing like that, but it's still up there in the feel good realm. Don't let social media, don't let the bad social media ruin you, people. Like it did me.
Aside from just the fact that he has how does having him this time make things a lot different?
He was asked about how is it different having CJ Stroud back this time to face the Browns.
Yeah, having CJ, having your starting quarterback always gives you a chance to win. So we're excited to have him.
There you go.
DeMeco, you have these guys in such a great place mentally. It's like they're happy with their accomplishment, but they are still so hungry, and that's not an easy thing to do, to get everybody in that place mentally to really do that.
So Matt Musil asked about just the team being hungry and how it's not easy to accomplish that.
Yeah, our guys understand our goals and what we set out to accomplish. As I mentioned earlier, like just as true competitors as we all are, right? And we talk about all the time, we didn't come this far just to come this far. Yeah, everybody's excited, happy about the division. I mean, that's congrats. Now we have to move on. We have to continue to play football and go win games in the playoffs. That's what it's about.
I think as far as like the team being hungry or what have you, I think DeMeco is along the lines of because he used to talk about this in San Francisco. You got the right kind of guys. You don't have to talk about a lot of things. Like it's just a given. In San Francisco, I remember he was talking about guys having a standard for how hard they were going to hit and how hard they were going to practice and all of that. And he said, we just have high expectations. And if you have the right kinds of guys, they rise to those expectations. So you don't have to talk about it a lot. And I think that's where they're ahead of the curve on establishing a culture along those lines right now. They don't have to bully anybody into being hungry about things, which never works anyway. Like, come on, guys, be hungrier. You got to want it. As soon as you find yourself saying, like, you got to want it, you either got guys who are never going to want it or you're like the annoying, whiny guy that thinks that you want it more than everybody else.
The X-Men up mentality, especially when it comes to the development of younger players. Guy like Christian Harris comes and steps up in the pass rushing department, gets a big sack against Gardner Minshew. As a former linebacker, where have you seen his biggest growths, and more importantly, how has he continued to take on that leadership role for the team?
So he's asked about Christian Harris and where has he seen growth and him taking on a leadership role.
Christian has truly developed all throughout the entire year. Right? He's gotten better each week. He's become more comfortable with what we're asking him to do. He's playing much faster. He's playing physical. He's playing mean. Like, I love his tenacity out on the field. I think when it comes to just playing ability in the passing game, he's making plays there, whether it's sacks, getting after the quarterback, or attacking the ball when he's in coverage. But also just the way he's tackling, right? The physical nature of his tackling, like it's grown, and he's done a really great job of, I think, showing up and making impact plays for us. And that's where Christian has truly grown, and I'm very proud of Christian, right, to see his growth throughout the entire year, see him develop into a quality starting linebacker making plays for us.
Okay, so I think that off-ball linebacker has been kind of a steadily devalued position in the NFL, but kind of like safety, it's one of those things that when you have a good one, all of a sudden it makes things way, way better. Think about Troy Polamalu with the Steelers forever, just what a key he was to having a consistently good defense every single year. And I think with this defense, what's missing right now compared to San Francisco is the second level players like Fred Warner and Dre Greenlaw. And I think there's a chance Christian Harris could develop into that caliber of player. It's still like, I don't want to diminish how good those guys are, but Christian Harris is starting to take that trajectory. He's got that athletic ability, and a lot of what those guys do really well really starts with the recognition, the play recognition. So he's doing some things really well. There were some things that showed up in that game with all the linebackers when it came to the RPOs, where again, I think the emphasis after the first couple drives was, hey, we got to clog up these zones and not give easy receptions to Pittman or tight ends or anybody else. So they were a little bit delayed sometimes making the read on the RPOs, and the Colts do a really good job of that. Gardner Minshew is very effective on a per play basis with the RPOs, and I think that Jonathan Taylor maybe just started to click with that all of Shane Steichen's offense over the past few games. So there's that, but then at the safety position too. I don't want to insult the guy, the Polynesian guy. Oh, his name. Somebody tell me for the 49ers. There's some things that they can do with the 49ers, or that DeMeco could do in terms of deception, disguise, and flexibility with the safeties that the Texans aren't quite there yet. So that's where I'm hoping, between maybe Jalen Petrie learning some hard lessons this year and those guys like Christian Harris continuing to come along, those guys down the center line of your defense, they make everybody else so much better because you can disguise, you can get creative with your coverages, you can mix and match, you can swap responsibilities, and they're just not quite there yet, but they're starting to show it. So that part's really promising. And then Christian Harris's development, especially, I was afraid at the beginning of the season that Christian Harris was going to be like another casualty of a guy that's super athletic but just can't quite put it together. It started to click for him, so it was cool.
In the last game, Nico had about 95 and touchdown. But obviously, most of the other receivers didn't really do that much in the past from a production standpoint, outside of the little nuance thing that CJ mentioned. But against the Browns, who have really good defensive backs, how imperative would it be for the other receivers to get involved, knowing that if everything is just going to Nico, how that could stall against a really good Browns defense?
Okay, so kind of what we touched on earlier, which is the Browns are a much better defense than the Colts were. Not that the Colts were shoddy or anything. It's just the Browns are really, really good. So are you going to have to spread the ball around more? I believe I'm getting about half of this. So you're going to have to spread the ball around to more than just Nico.
Yeah, when you talk about our passing game, Nico, CJ, playmakers, in the position we're in now, the game we're in, like, we just have to find a way to move the ball, right? To me, yeah, Nico has done an outstanding job this entire year. He deserves a ton of credit for the season that he's had, a career year. He's shown up every single week and made play after play, whether he's double covered, it doesn't matter. Like, he showed up with a willingness and a want to, right, to be that leading receiver for us, and he did that. And he deserves a ton of credit for that. If anytime you have more guys who can make plays, it's a plus for us. And we would like many more guys to step up and make plays for us. But at the end of the day, however you get it done, you get it done. No matter if it's Nico, right, no matter who it is catching the football, right, we just have to find a way to get the win.
That was a professional non-answer by DeMeco Ryans. I think that the big things that you need in the absence of like Nico Collins getting 200 receiving yards in any given week, when a team is going to focus on taking Nico out of the game, Dalton Schultz, without a huge numbers day, on that final drive, that was one of the key and integral parts of that game. Or was it second and 20 or first and 20 when he caught and broke the tackle and drove to near first down? Like, those things need to show up again. The running backs getting involved in the pass game, that might end up being more of a factor this week than it was this past week. The other guys like Robert Woods, just if he's healthy, being that security blanket of a guy that can be exactly where he needs to be. We saw that 2 weeks ago. So it's going to have to be, I think, more of it's unlikely that it's going to be hey, get the ball to Nico no matter what, because I don't think some of those opportunities will be there this week. It's unlikely that all those opportunities will be there. It'll have to be more of a complete spread the ball around, which we know. Look, CJ is going to do a better job of that than Case or Davis are going to be able to do versus the Browns.
During the regular season, if something happens a week prior, you could always tell the team, okay, we'll do better next game, or we can improve on next game. Now you're in a position to where there is, if you lose this game, there is no next game. What is your message to them going into the week? And does it change any from what you told them last week about the win or go home and the magnitude of that?
So I think basically the question is, now that it's win or go home, is your message any different than it is in the regular season?
Yeah, our message hasn't changed since our last game versus the Titans. So we've been in this mode. We've been in playoff mode for the past 2 weeks. So our message, our mode hasn't changed, and our guys understand where we are. They understand what we have to do.
Yeah, that's another one I would go back to. Okay, what kind of guys do you have in the locker room? Like, if you've got guys that need to be told, hey guys, just so you know, like, if we lose this one, we're like done. Okay, like, yeah, they get it. And look, Nick is over these past couple of years taken a bunch of guys from Power 5 conferences. They've talked about how they care about guys who have championship experience and kind of have that attitude, which I totally get. Like, as a player, I was always I always looked a little bit side-eye at that strategy because I had never been on a championship team. So I was like, Coach, I feel like I have a good attitude. I'd like to be part of your football team. is like, and you make exceptions, obviously. But I think the more guys you have from high quality programs, including high school, they just kind of get those expectations. Well, like CJ and Will coming in here, like they didn't have a clue about all the crap that had happened the last 3 years. They just come in, they're like, yeah, I play football and I win football games. And sometimes sometimes it's hard to manage those guys if things really go south because they've never done that before. But like, there's nothing wrong with being a front runner as long as you're out front. And they've had the requisite amount of adversity this year.
You talked about all year from camp, like that your focus was the next game, execution, getting better, and not getting ahead of yourselves. Has that, I guess, mindset helped you and the team at this point to be focused and not let this moment be too big for you?
Right.
So she basically asked about staying focused and not getting ahead of themselves. Has that mindset helped them so far?
When it comes to the focus and these, big moments that externally, right, they become big moments, and a lot of people there'll be more coverage, there'll be more camera, there'll be more people attentive to what we're doing, but our focus doesn't change. Our preparation doesn't change, and that's what allows you to be consistent. It allows you to go out and execute because, as I always say, when the ball is snapped, nobody cares who's covering it, how many interviews you've done, right, how many people are watching. No one cares. Truly, the only thing that matters when that ball is snapped is, are you executing? Are you playing relentless? Are you finishing the way we like to finish? Right, and if you do that, then everything else takes care of itself. Then there'll probably be another big game coming. But it doesn't change. You don't change who you are because of the moment. Continue to be the same team that we've been. Continue to work, right, how we've worked. Just stay humble and continue to work, and we'll be lifted up if we do things the right way.
Man, that Hoosiers speech is so true. Where Gene Hackman, if you haven't seen Hoosiers, anybody, Gene Hackman, the basketball coach, takes a small town Indiana team back when there were no classes or divisions to the state championship. And they're in the arena. He takes out a measuring tape, measures it. It's 10 feet from the floor to the rim, makes the point that, hey, we're playing on the same court as ever. That is so true. Like, once you get out there, I think the biggest thing I've ever noticed about big games is that they just seem to go by faster, like in a blink of an eye. And I don't know if that's because you're genuinely just playing better competition, or because there is just that much more natural focus that goes to it. But a lot of the external preparation, and and this is backed up by, I've read a lot about sports psychology and everything with this, and different coaches and how they approach it. Just if you have the right kind of guys, they rise to the occasion naturally. And if you've got the right routine and you've got the right system, your guys are going to rise to the occasion, and everything else just kind of, you get tunnel vision, and it's the coolest place to be. Now I'm oh, damn it. I never get nostalgic about crap. I'm feeling nostalgic.
You say it's an improvement league. Where do you see your team has improved in some areas?
Say that again, bro.
You say it's an improvement league. Where do you see your team? Where do you see the improvement?
I said it's an improvement league. Where have you seen your players improve in certain areas?
Overall, I would say just our improvements, just overall as a team, just when I say learning how to win games, right? Learning how to win tough games, tight games. Like, that's what this league is all about. And our team has done that throughout the course of the entire year. We've gotten better. Situational football, we've just gotten better, played smarter, played cleaner, and that's what allowed us to be in the position we're in right now.
Okay, where have they gotten better? The pass rush, even though they were getting a lot of pressures, and I know this gets nuanced when you talk about this because, look, people love to say that sacks don't matter. The truth is, they don't matter as much as they are sometimes worshipped, but they matter. Like a sack is about 4 times more valuable on average than a pressure when it comes to impact on the final score of the game. They're drive killers. So sacks are valuable. Over time, usually if you get a bunch of pressures, it balances out and you end up getting the sacks too. But there are times where guys are getting a lot of pressures, but that they're not going to naturally turn into sacks. That is what the Texans had early in the season. The first half of the season, they were getting close, but either guys, and Will has talked about this. Will says he doesn't care about those double team rates and everything. They weren't quite finishing properly, or as a group, they weren't rushing the passer well with a disciplined pass rush where everybody was playing their responsibilities. So one guy might flush the quarterback and get a pressure out of it, but the quarterback had somewhere to run and at least get rid of the ball. The disciplined pass rush in the second half, coupled with guys like Will Anderson, as well as others, just flat out getting better at their craft. Like Will turn to the corner literally when he's got better dip. He's flipping his hips better. He's taking better angles to help him turn the corner. That part has just been vastly improved in terms of just a genuinely fearsome pass rush. So that's been cool to see.
You wanted the same message from the day you were hired, before you even met the players, about getting better at the game, et cetera, every day. You've been on a lot of teams when you played, coached, that didn't get the message. What's so special about this group of players?
So I think he was basically saying, okay, sometimes players don't get the message. What's so special about this group, and like how have they gotten the message?
It has followed on your message of getting better.
Yeah, what's special about our group and the messaging is, their love for football, right, and their love to compete and their love to improve. And when you have guys who play and they show up with that mindset that, I see if I get better, right, that's going to put us all in a better position. It'll improve all of our conditions if we continue to just stay focused on the small things, right? The big things will take care of themselves. And that's how the guys that we brought in, the guys that we have on our team, right, it's their mindset is what allowed the message to come to life, right? And they're the only reason why we're here, right? By them going out, playing together, right, continue to build that continuity, right, amongst each other, becoming a tight team, in the locker room, right, away from the building, not just on the field, but becoming a tighter team has allowed us to thrive and be in the position we're in right now.
That's one cool thing when you talk about making small improvements and compounding them and everything. Like that's something we talked a lot about when CJ would talk about these things during mini camps and training camp. He seems to have a very mature understanding about the value, the power of small, of things getting a little bit better every day, how much it adds up over time, in a way that it made me feel better about CJ's money management potential too, because that's like understanding compound interest at that age is vital to just actually retain all your money and understand why he needs to build it. I worry about these guys. Okay. Seen a lot of ugly stuff, man. A lot of guys squander their money. I don't worry about that. I feel like CJ's very, very, I would just bet that CJ is incredibly careful with his money.
After the game, the cameras caught you in the hallway, showing some emotions. Can you just take us through what you were going through at that time?
Yeah, I was there in the hallway just congratulating every player that walked in. And then just took a moment to just reflect, just a moment of prayer, and just thankfulness, gratefulness, just for being able to be in this position to lead this team, right, to lead this special group of young men, right, and for us to accomplish, right, what we set out to accomplish of getting that spot in the playoffs. Right? I know how much it meant to each and every one of our players, each and every one of our support staff, right? It meant a lot to everyone in our entire organization. So that moment, just a moment of gratitude and prayer, just thankful.
Okay, two things. One, whoever in the Houston media corps is coughing, and I know some of you watch my YouTube, just be careful around these guys, okay? If I see somebody that's is out with a cough or that RSV or whatever the hell's going around now, like it's your ass. It's your ass. All right, I'm coming after you. Second, I can't even remember what the question was about. What was it about? The importance of fullback is coming up. Okay, on to the next one. We're on to the Browns.
You had DeMeco 95 touchdown, but you also had Dalton Schultz looking for that big plays. Just with the mentality of getting to the next play against a defense like Cleveland, how important is it to be able to have a fullback and a tight end that can get you to that next play set up for another opportunity?
Yeah, no.
Okay, he was asked about having a tight end and a fullback. Two fullbacks, really, now that Brevin Jordan can play. And I remember now. Okay, so he was talking about being in the tunnel in that moment. That was really cool. If you haven't seen that, I don't know, just Google DeMeco Ryans in the hallway after Colts game. It was they kind of captured him in that moment where he kind of had his head down and was just reflecting on everything he just said. I always wonder too, like exactly when different coaches compose and figure out what they're going to say to the team. I don't think he had to spend a lot of time on it because the victory speech was basically him and CJ and everybody running, just jumping and chanting. I don't even remember what he said. It was such a cool moment.
No matter who
He's so good at jumping, DeMeco is. If you just watch for every now and then, just pause the TV and and watch it in slow motion, like how springy he is, and then how softly he lands, and with such grace and flexibility. He's an all-timer when it comes to that. I don't know what category that is in coaching attributes, but he's the best at it.
Who gets the football? Fullback, tight end, running back. It's about creating positive yardage. It's about staying on schedule, staying ahead of the chains, and that's what we didn't do the first game. We got behind the chains. We were in second and long, third and long too often, right? And you playing against the top defense in the league, and you're in second and long a lot. It's not going to go in your favor very much. So whatever it takes, however we have to get it done, we just have to continue to generate positive yardage.
Okay, one really cool thing about that final drive where, remember, the first half was going great. CJ comes out in the third quarter and the offense doesn't look so hot. A couple of punts and a field goal drive. That go-ahead touchdown drive, they only had 1 third down, and I believe it was a 3rd and 3. So as gritty as that drive was, and as much as it looked like, man, they were grinding it out. Remember, I mean, Dalton Schultz had to break a tackle. Nico Collins was bulldozing people on the sideline. They were moving the chains, and they only had to convert a 3rd and 3. That was a really cool part of that. I mean, that was CJ throwing what looked like it was going to be intentional grounding, and it ends up being a reception to Nico. It was CJ getting hit and then hitting Nico on that drag. It was Devin Singletary having to dodge his own tight end 4 yards in the backfield, and then just still make it look easy for the touch. Oh my God, that was a hell of a drive.
You got time for a couple more?
No, CJ mentioned that the first time he worked out with Nico, he thought he was going to be a superstar. I'm wondering, when was the first time you really thought he was special, and how have you seen him handle this responsibility and the increased attention that he's got?
The question is about Nico Collins. On the transcript, it says on when he can remember seeing how special of a player Nico Collins is.
Yeah, I mean, I know you guys can go back to my OTA interviews and training camp. I've constantly talked about Nico and the plays that he's made, and that hasn't changed since OTAs. I know I keep saying that, and everybody's probably looking at me like, oh, you guys don't have receivers, or you guys don't have – like, Nico has been doing this since OTAs and training camp, and he hasn't changed. His mindset hasn't changed. He's been the same guy no matter if he catches whatever, 9 passes for 195, or he catches 2, he hasn't changed. He's been the same guy. He's a big-time playmaker for us, and he shows up every single day. He hasn't changed who he is. He still shows up in a humble manner. He shows up, and he works hard every day at practice, and that's why he continues to get better. He continues to show up in the game.
And like the fact that, let's see, I want to see Nico Collins just as a reflection of what he did in the Browns game. 4 catches for 18 yards in that Browns game. Last week versus the Titans, 7 catches for 80 yards. And then versus the Colts, obviously 9 receptions for 4,087 yards. He was actually 195. But, I mean, we've seen this already with Nico, right? Where last year with Davis, Mills, and I'm not trying to pile on Davis or anything, but like Davis is not as good a quarterback as CJ Stroud is. He was every time Nico was targeted, it seemed like it was a nearly uncatchable football. You know, he actually, for the percentage of drops he had on times he was targeted, was like an extreme gap from what you would normally see when there's a difference between receptions, targets, and drops. He didn't have any drops that were graded as drops because they were really, really hard to catch. He just wasn't getting good targets, and he also wasn't getting any help from the play calling. Where this year they've done a great job of getting the ball to him. I'll credit the scheme first because that's first in the process, but CJ getting the ball to him where he can turn and run without having to break stride. If you can recall, you know, to Andre Johnson, various different quarterbacks that threw to Andre Johnson, it was never. There's so many instances. If you go back and watch Andre Johnson, like watch complete games of Andre Johnson, so many times where he's on a crossing route and he's reaching back to catch the ball, or he's reaching up to catch the ball, and it robs you of that first real hard step up field. And Nico gets that because he's got CJ throwing to him.
We're closing with Matt, DJ.
You had a front row seat to see what Joe Flacco can do, but when you watch this guy, are you amazed? I mean, what are your thoughts when you see Flacco in action?
Flacco has done a really, really great job, leading this team to only be there for about a month now. Just see how much they have in him, seeing the plays that he's able to make in the play-action passing game, the shot plays down the field, the accuracy, right? They're doing a great job of protecting him. He's doing an unbelievable job, right? And he's the reason why they're in the position that they're in, right? Because he's made a ton of plays for them. Hasn't surprised me because Joe has done it for a long time throughout his entire career. So he hasn't surprised me one bit with the plays that he's been able to make.
Okay, the Browns are interesting. I'm going to bring this up because I know UXG Freestyles has issues. He has more. I question Bobby Slowick sometimes, but I try to keep the grand picture in mind where UGK, he's a little bit more extreme than I. If Bobby didn't run the ball 3 times in a row in the end zone, Tank wouldn't be hurt. I know UXG Freestyles has been, well, that's Lori. Sorry, Lori. He's got some other issues. Anyway, okay, so the Browns, who have Stefanski, who's in that Kubiak part of the Kubiak-Shanahan tree, they have a similar philosophy with Joe Flacco in that, look, we might be running the ball for 2 yards per carry, but we are going to show the defense that we're committed to the run. And running the ball effectively isn't necessary. It's awesome and it helps, but it isn't necessary to run the ball awesome to get the linebackers and safeties to bite on play action. You just have to show that you're committed to it. And this is pretty consistent with Shanahan. I mean, whether Shanahan is running the ball well or not, more times than not, they're running the ball well. They're just flat out, they're going to show that, yeah, we're going to run the ball. And it's frustrating, but I have a hard time arguing with how good the results are. I mean, Joe Flacco has been phenomenal on play action. The Texans held the Browns to 1.8 yards per carry in that game. And it didn't do a damn thing for him. You're still you just can't take it out of the linebackers and the safeties that they're going to it's too much of a natural innate response to come up and play the run, and then they get burned in it. So I'm okay with it. If it gets to be an issue down the road when it's more of a genuinely great offense, then we'll see. But right now I'm okay with it. As far as Joe Flacco, everything I just said, he's really, really good at the play action.
CJ and Nico, they rightfully get a lot of the credit, but how valuable has Laramie Tunsil been to being that blindside protector for CJ in his rookie season?
Yeah, for CJ.
Okay, so the question was about Laramie Tunsil. The transcript says on the value that Laramie Tunsil has brought to the offense.
CJ and Nico, to make the plays that they make, none of us get the success or get the recognition based on just ourselves, right? CJ, Nico get a lot of attention, but they can't complete those passes if you don't have protection. So with our offensive line and what they've done the entire year, shuffling a lot of different guys in and out, right? It all starts with the protection. And Laramie has been a guy he's helped us a ton with protection, right? He can block a lot of guys one-on-one, and you can send help elsewhere. And when you have a guy like that, it truly helps the entire offense. So Laramie has done a great job, but it's also the entire offensive line. Every man that stepped in there this entire year has done a great job of holding it down, protecting CJ, and giving him an opportunity, right, to complete the passes that he's made downfield.
I don't know if any of you guys work with salespeople. I'm sure if there's 250 people here right now, I'm guessing a good several dozen of you work with salespeople. And Sean and I have talked about this because Sean used to be in sales. And Sean was like that rare, awesome salesperson. Sean, my co-host, Sean Pendergast, I think that's actually really good administratively, but also is good at sales, where a lot of really good salespeople are just a train wreck administratively. I feel like that about Laramie Tunsil. I feel like he's your best salesperson, but he also cannot be trusted to keep an appointment book or something like that, or to keep up with the billing statements, because he cannot stop false starting. I don't know why. He's so athletic and he's so good that he doesn't need to get that extra 2/16 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch further back by timing the snap count right. But that's the only thing it's the only thing you can fault him for, except that those 2 false starts were drive killers. At least the one definitely was, because it knocked them back to 3rd and 10. So they're drive killers. If you would just not do that he'd be the perfect. He wouldn't be the perfect offensive lineman. Trent Williams is the perfect offensive lineman, but he'd be damn close to the perfect offensive lineman. Damn it.
You talked last week about working with Nick and how Nick's been throughout the season. How have the McNairs been working with you?
So John McClain asks about how's it been working with the McNairs family.
Just from not just off season, but just during the season.
Yeah, the McNair family has been awesome. Right, you talk about support from the ownership. They've been outstanding with their support. Right, whatever we've asked, whatever we've needed from their end, they've been open arms, and it's truly like one of the reasons why chose to come here is just they want to create that family environment, and that's what it's truly felt like. It's felt like family from day one, and they've shown that throughout the entire year. Right, they're with us right through the ups and downs. They're with us, right, and it's very important to have an ownership group who truly cares not only about the wins and losses, but they care about the people in the organization. I think that's what sets the McNair family apart from others because they have truly gracious hearts, really great family, great people, and it's a joy to work with them.
That's been one of the cool things about this year has been, I think a lot with Hannah McNair as the driving force behind a lot of it is the reinvention, I guess, of or at least a different and the emergence of a different perception of the McNair family. And we saw, I think most Texans fans, could look at the team and understand a lot of the issues that the team had and understand that the owner is always going to be responsible for a lot of the issues, but that the national media at times would jump on and basically use the Texans as a way to conveniently virtue signal whatever message they wanted to put out there. It was very easy to just say, well, Cal McNair is obviously that or this or obviously that, which is like couldn't be further from the truth in a lot of respects. But I think that like the McNairs were also conscious of like wanting to be a part of social change and do things like they actively wanted and are still involved in trying to make things better in a lot of respects, like in society, but they can't stand up and defend themselves by doing this. I'm going to get too far down a rabbit hole on this. Basically, DeMeco knows the McNairs. DeMeco knows Cal. I don't think he knew Hannah as well, but obviously knows that Cal's heart is in the right place most of the time. And it was partly a transition of a really, really rough transition from the original owner, Mr. McNair, dying on and Dick Cal taking over. And that's a pretty traumatic time to be dealing with all those other changes, and they made some mistakes, and DeMeco fixed them. DeMeco fixed them all. He came in here with like with a crescent wrench and basically fixed everything.
All right, thank you guys. Thank you guys.
Yeah, first of all, I just want to give all glory and praise to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Apologies. I did not mean to cut him off in the middle of his brief testimony. Trying to be better about that stuff, All
right. Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, first.
Okay. So, as far as DeMeco goes, look, the cool thing about DeMeco is I sit here and reflect on everything he just said, because that was a long-ass press conference, is there's zero part of me that worries about, rookie head coach in the playoffs. How's he going to handle the pressure? Because it was an incredibly clean ledger when you look at game management issues or anything, clock management, errors with instant replay. They were few and far between when we could even really question the decisions. I mean, you could have a differing opinion about whether they should have attempted that field goal at the end of the Jaguars game. There were a few different times with timeouts or clock issues. Bobby Slowick throwing at the end of the Bengals game when they probably should have just been running at that point. Like that might have been the most egregious moment where people had real issues. But by a rookie coach's standards especially, it was incredibly clean this year. And I don't think that there's any part of DeMeco's personality where people look at it and think, oh, that was when he's going to pee down his leg. Like the guy that basically has never in his entire life, as far as I can tell, lost control of his emotions or anything. I think he's going to be all right being in the playoffs. And obviously, CJ has played in very big games before and done remarkably well. Just about a year ago in the semifinal game, CJ played a hell of a game. So not worried about it. This is CJ from Saturday night after the game. I had not seen it yet, so I want to see it. But let me pull up the transcripts, because as we know, it's sometimes tough to get these things. So Texans quotes. You guys can't see this. Do you guys remember when we used to have an ad that ran on 610 where it was a person, the narrator said, you can't see me because I'm on the radio, and I can't see you because I'm blind. And I just always wanted to say, except that it was a sponsor, like, well, I mean, you also, like, even if you had sight, you also wouldn't be able to see the listeners. Like, that's just how radio works, man. I felt bad for the guy. They gave him an awful script to read. All right, so CJ Stroud, after the game, after he vanquishes the detestable Indianapolis Colts.
I just want to give all glory and praise to my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, man. Woo, it's a good game. It's a lot of respect for those guys over there. And to be my first season to make the playoffs, man, it's been a heck of a year, man. I'm blessed enough to be in this position for this great organization, this great city of Houston. And, man, I'm just blessed, man. The words can't explain how proud I am of my teammates. And without them, there's no me or no winning, or, you know what I'm saying? So it's just a blessing just to be able to be part of something special.
Okay, referencing his teammates, that's a standard. He always does that. Hidden thing that I've always really liked about CJ, and this is something you might not notice, comes up to the podium, gives a statement. That's like a head coach type of thing to do. You set the tone, you get the message you want out there in case. Because sometimes, man, you go into a press conference and you want to say something and then nobody asks the question. And then at the end, you're not going to be like, well, at the end, you want to get out of there. Because if you're me, you're hypoglycemic by then. But you also, you're like, it feels weird to tack that on at the end. It feels like an afterthought. He's very mature, people. Listen, Cleveland, I know that some of you are here via the algorithm. Let me tell you this. I think the Texans might have the more mature quarterback. I know Flacco's probably got 17 kids by now and everything. And I will say, look, Joe Flacco, honestly, he's got kind of a vibe going about him now, does he not? Ladies, back me up on this. I feel like Joe Flacco is never somebody I thought of as like a good-looking guy. I look at him now and I'm like, this guy might have he's got a little bit of that, he's like that salt and pepper handsomeness to him. Good job, Joe Flacco.
See his last drive, 7-7.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to have to read these. All right. Let's see. Let me scroll down to DeMeco. The question was, how are you feeling about your performance and everybody else's? Oh, no, that was the first question. He didn't give a statement. I take back everything I said, damn it. All right. Somebody wanted him to take him through that last drive.
What did you take me through that last drive?
Yeah, I told him before we went out there, this is the most important drive of the year. And the look that I got back from my teammates, man, it was like, man, let's ride. Like, it was like, let's do this thing. It was nobody holding their hat down on a previous play or anything like that. It was just like, man, let's go win this game. Let's do it. And every play, like, even we moved backwards, I think, 2 or 3 times. Like, we had 3 penalties, and we still, like, persevered through that. And I just think that's a testimony to the work we put in, the type of guys that we brought into the system, our coaching staff, how they called a great game. Just a multitude of an organization just putting it together. And I'm just blessed enough to be a part of it.
Yeah, that last drive was 12 plays, which included penalties, some negative plays. That sack was huge, which underrated part of that game and CJ's decision-making ability was that sack where it was he had a free rusher coming at him that he actually just went down. He heard footsteps and went down instead of taking what could have been a really big hit. Even by today's legal hit standards, that could have been a really bad hit because it would have been blindside. He could have gone down and hit his head. Having the wherewithal to have that feeling and to just go down right there, my God, yes. Fitting that he did it in in Indianapolis, because nobody was better at going down when he needed to go to take a dive than Peyton Manning. Be a coward.
First play of the game, was that kind of the plan all week long, or did you see something the defense was giving you?
Okay, so the first play of the game, is that the plan all week long, or did you see something from the defense? For those of you who missed the first play of the game, the Texans, much like the Colts did 2 weeks prior, they went deep on the very first play and hit Nico Collins for a 75-yard touchdown.
Oh, we didn't think they were going to be in that coverage. But slow as a dog, man. Slow as that guy. So he had a feeling like we can hit him up top. And Nico did a great job creating separation. I tried to do my best to get it out there. And I remember like watching Michael Vick and Deshaun Jackson. The first play of the game, I think it was like 2010 or something like that, and they just let it fly. And once I knew the first play was gonna be that, I just kept thinking about that. So, man, it's cool just to see Nico just ball out, and that was a special first play, man. Special.
Yeah, that cornerback had outside leverage on that, which would you think that he maybe thought that he was going to get some help from the safety, but the safety stayed down there. So that's one of those moments where it's got to be like you got to control your emotions not to get that little twinge where you end up gunning it too hard or too soft or errantly. In my experience as a quarterback back in 4th grade, that's how it was.
Obviously, Nico, everybody has to contribute to this thing. Nico steps up when you guys are way thin at wide receiver, and it's all night long, no matter what they're trying to do. What kind of performance did he put together? What kind of lift did he give this football team to go out there with 195 in this kind of state?
So he was, I think that was Greg Bailey, asked about Nico and the lift that he gave the Texans with forgetting. Greg said 195. I like that, 195 yards.
I think he just stamped who he is. I told him when our first time ever working out together, I said, bro, you a superstar. Even though I was young, I never even snapped the ball yet in the league, but I know good receivers. I played at Ohio State where we have tremendous receivers, and you see what they did. But I told him, man, my goal is to make you look as best as you can, to make you look like you. And I appreciate him just being just a consistent, great friend to me, somebody who I can just let my hair down with, and I think our chemistry, it shows on the field. Our friendship shows on the field. So I'm super proud of that dude, man. And it's just the beginning for him, just the beginning. And I feel like our other receivers did a great job too when their numbers were called, and I'm proud of those guys, man. They stepped up big time this week, especially in the run game, and even in the pass game, like even being a team player and clearing it out, or doing just small things that a lot of people don't want to do in this league, but that's what wins games, and I'm just proud of those guys too.
Him telling him he was a star right off when he met him, and it's true. That's cool. Him talking about Garrett Wilson and Marvin Harrison Jr. and all the other guys from Ohio State that he's had experience with. But the way he kind of talks about his receivers and wanting to get them fed and get them paid and all that stuff, I just can't stop thinking about like basketball point guards. I don't know. CJ was a very good basketball player, because I was watching. Who was it? Was it Jason Williams? I think it was Jason Williams earlier talking about when he was young and he'd go out and play at the park. The only way he was going to get on or pick back up again if they lost was if he fed the ball to other guys. And so many young point guards have that story of being an undersized guy. I think I'd love to hear like CJ's basketball side of that. And if obviously the skills transfer, but some of the attitude of really understanding like, oh, okay, my job is to get these guys the ball. I can do that.
You take a chance to relax a little bit tomorrow and watch.
Very common Jason Williams, CJ Stroud comparison there.
Yeah, I'm gonna watch the games, just get some recovery in, and just see what goes down. Just prepared to see what happens.
So remember, this was after the game. So this was before CJ knew that he was the AFC South Division winner.
In preseason, that you guys were going to talk to the world. And now you're in the position where the guys are making playoffs. How special is it to be a part of this moment?
I think basically just how special is it to be a part of this moment was the question.
It's tremendously special. It's just, like I said before, just a multitude of great people and a great organization putting together this time. one thing that I think about, like, all the time we spend together, away from our families, away from our hometowns, away from people we love, like it means something now, you know? Like, it always has, but just the time that we put in together, to see it kind of, for the fruits of that labor to come to be, it's a blessing, man. I'm just blessed to be a part of this.
Two more guys. CJ, your mom has always been at the most important games for you.
So that's Tank. He said your mom has always been one of the most important things for you.
She was here tonight just to be able to do that, and not for only the city of Houston, but for her in the stand.
Okay, so your mom's always been important to you. She was here tonight just to be able to do that, and not just for the city of Houston, but for her in the stands.
Yeah, I kept looking at her. More times than not, I don't be finding her, but she was so close I could hear her. Yeah, she prays. So, like, honestly, like, when I look up and I see her praying, man, it just gives me a sense of comfort, like, a sense of, like, man, like, my mama praying for me, like, it gotta go good, you know? So, I love my mom to death. She's so supportive of me. She's been with me through thick and thin, and I love her to death, man. My sister as well, my brother, my other brother Isaiah, I miss him, I love him. And just really all my support staff, like my supportive family, Caleb, my best friends, STN back home, the city of the IE, like, just like most of the people who've poured into me as a kid to see me do what I'm doing now, man, it's a tremendous blessing.
Okay, so he looks for his mom in the stands. That's really cool. Except he doesn't always find her. I feel like that's putting a lot of pressure on his mom. We gotta be sure that women. How are the restrooms? What's the restroom situation like in NRG? I don't usually see a lot of women waiting in long lines outside of them. Is it pretty good? Is it bad? Like Minute Maid gets bad sometimes for the ladies. I know. Maybe I'm just ignorant and haven't seen the women standing outside the restrooms. But we need CJ's mom to be sure she's always back in her seat as soon as possible. Damn it.
You'll find out later if you're playing, but
I got you.
you'll find out later if you're playing. But for now, just know that you guys have already been through and built some grit, won a lot of these close games. That makes you built even better for playoff football.
So the question was, do you feel like all the grit you guys have had this season will help you in a playoff game?
100%. Yeah, we definitely know what it takes to win. And I always tell them boys, like, it don't got to be close. So hopefully, man, we start putting four quarters together. But in these type of games, man, like, that's kind of how it goes. You know, it's uphill battle. It's up and down. And all you want is the dub. So we're proud of that.
Last question. How does it feel to give the franchise this moment tonight? And then after this, I want to I got an article from the Cleveland.com that is letting Cleveland people know about the Houston Texans. So I'm curious what they're saying. Sometimes you see a blind spot when they tell you something like that.
I asked DeMeco the same question. Rookie head coach, a lot of gone with this franchise wrong the last couple of years. Hannah and Cal hired him to be the rookie head coach. A lot of work went in for them to draft you as well. Hannah runs off the field tonight, screaming she can't stop crying. So give her that moment.
He had mentioned that Hannah ran off the field, and I'm sure many of you saw it, screaming, I can't stop crying. Screaming, I mean, but like in a happy way, not like, I can't stop crying.
The conversation I had on the phone with Mr. McNair when I got drafted was like it was like, man, like God sent him like to be a part of my life, and Miss McNair has been amazing as well. Just like, because I mean, it's my first team, so I really don't know, but like a lot of my teammates say, man, a lot of other places aren't like that, you know. So I'm just blessed enough to be with them through this time, you know. And DeMeco is a perfect guy for this job, man. He brings something out of his players that like is undescribable, just like that strain, that mental stability, that toughness that he talks about. So, man, I can do nothing but just be appreciative and just be thankful for where I was picked and like the situation we're in now, and it's just been a blessing.
If there's one thing I would say that's really, really important these days, having seen a young quarterback decide that he wanted to get out of here, which, hey, Browns fans, I'll tell you a story. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but Deshaun Watson used to be here in Houston, and after a few years, he didn't want to be here anymore. It got kind of, I don't know, it got kind of yada yada yada. He's somewhere else now. I don't know. I haven't seen him play in a while, but I think the big thing is if you think about the ideal situation in terms of keeping your quarterback and having peace is the Kansas City Chiefs, where Mahomes had such a great experience there his first few years, obviously, that he signed a very team-friendly 10-year deal, and he wanted to be ingrained in that city. Like, he just flat out wanted to be a huge part of that city, bought a bunch of bought interest in businesses and sports teams in the city. And that's the opportunity you have. I think like CJ's wired that way where he just wants to be a part of something. So hopefully, whether it's with Super Bowl victories or not, like creating that kind of environment instead of just having his head beat in for 3 straight years can hopefully go a long way. The article, I want to look at this article. Tell me if, let's see, let's present this. I'm going to share a screen with you folks. And it's going to be 5 things to know about the Houston Texans. How's that looking? Not like that. And then you're going to see whichever. That's not going to work, is it? All right, we're just going to go like this. Plus, I don't need you guys to see what the algorithm sends me for ads. I don't need to pull a whole Jason Whitlock here where I act shocked that a body massager shows up. All right. Cleveland.com, 5 things to know about the Texans. Tell me if these are accurate or not. Stroud is the true difference maker for Houston. I agree, Cleveland.com. When the Browns went to Houston in Week 16, they had few problems against Case Keenum and Davis Mills. The Texans' backup quarterbacks combined to throw for 53 yards in the first half of the initial matchup compared to Joe Flacco's 246. They go on to cite a lot of CJ's numbers, 20 for 26 for 264 yards and 2 touchdowns versus the Colts, a 75-yard play on 12 plays for the eventual game-winning touchdown. The Texans have had at least 200 yards passing in 10 games this season. Stroud played in 9 of them, so clearly they'll have a much tougher task. Yeah, that's by far obviously the biggest thing. Now, I think the first thing, if I were a Browns fan, that I would say if they heard old Sethers saying, well, look, Texans have CJ back, they would say, okay, did he play defense? Because the defense was kind of an issue for the Texans. Yeah, very good point. I think the biggest argument you can make is, yes, the Texans defense has to play better. And a lot of that is just going to be on the mental side of things. Look, some of those receptions that Joe Flacco made to Amari Cooper were just great. They were great throws and great catches, but there were also blown coverages. There were mistakes. The run defense was really good. I don't worry about that. I would be extremely surprised if the Browns run the ball anywhere as well as Jonathan Taylor did, because in this stretch with Joe Flacco, the Browns have not been running the ball well. That's not been part of their MO. They've committed to the run, and it helps set up the play action, but the play action pass is what's just been absolutely lethal for them. So what the hell? I think I lost the source material. No, here we go. All right. Second thing, the Texans' edge rushers also will be difference makers. This is interesting because we don't know exactly what Jonathan Grenard is going to do, but I would say the pass rushers in general for the Texans, not just Will Anderson, have been big difference makers. I think that if you saw 2 weeks ago when everybody was getting involved and all those guys were getting sacks, I think that was it's potential. Like, you could potentially do that on the edges versus this Browns offensive line. The Browns offensive line was banged up a lot. Their interior offensive line is back to being healthy, I believe. The tackles, one of whom is Jerron Christian for now, former Houston Texans player. If he's playing, there's an opportunity there. And it's all comes down to, okay, is Will Anderson healthy? Is John Grenard healthy? Those guys, by way of John Grenard being absent and then Will Anderson just being banged up, weren't as much of a factor in this last game, in the Colts game, as hopefully they could be, because that's the big one. The Browns have been doing a lot of max protection. They're going to try to figure out ways to keep Will Anderson and John Grenard from going off, but that's a key to the game for sure. Third thing that Cleveland.com wants you to know about the Texans is that Nico Collins has come alive again since Stroud's return. He had quite the breakout season for the Texans with the help of CJ Stroud, catching 80 passes for 1,297 yards and 8 touchdowns, all career highs. And then they mentioned that, the Week 16 matchup, he had 4 catches for 18 yards. I forgot that it was only 18 yards versus the Browns. That's not good at all. But he did have a touchdown, remember. He's gotten him back on track since Stroud's return. In the last 2 games, he has 16 catches for 275 yards and a touchdown. The thing is, even without that 75-yard reception this past week, he still averaged, without that 75-yard reception, he would have averaged 15 yards per catch, which is still really, really good. He ended up averaging 20 yards per catch with the reception. So, yeah, Nico Collins, kind of a big deal, except that this Browns defense is a lot better than the Colts defense. The Colts defense wasn't bad. This Browns defense is legit, and CJ's likely going to have to spread the ball around a little bit more than he did the other night, which is fine. Number 4, Cleveland.com wants you to know this about the Texans. Don't expect much in the run game from either team. The Browns came into Sunday ranked 12th in the NFL in rushing, but 22nd in yards per rush. The Texans aren't much better. They're 23rd in rushing offense and 28th in yards per run. I think both those stats are a little bit misleading in that, don't get me wrong, both of these teams struggle to run the ball. I think that since Flacco took over, I'd have to look at the stats. I think they're actually worse than what the overall season stats would be. And yet it hasn't mattered because they're utilizing the play action so effectively. So that's a tough one. Like the Texans held the Browns to 1.8 yards per attempt in the last game, and it didn't matter a bit because Joe Flacco is just lethal. I think there's a tendency to feel like, man, at some point, it's got to be smoke and mirrors, right? It's got to be like this balloon's got to burst because it doesn't seem possible that Flacco is playing this well. I've watched the games. Flacco is playing this well. It wasn't just that Texans game. It's not just some flukish stretch of good luck. Like, he's making a lot of really good throws. If this were scheme-based and guys were getting open just by the scheme and teams had to get a feel for maybe defenses will get a beat on what they're doing, I would say, okay. But Flacco is A, making some great throws, and B, the interceptions are not as bad as the stats would suggest. Think about the Texans game. Neither of the interceptions that Flacco threw were like quote unquote bad interceptions. One was a deep ball on 2nd and long, but in the waning moments of the half where you could have considered it an early punt perhaps, but it wasn't a backbreaker necessarily. And then just on the next series, he threw an interception to Derek Stingley on the very last play of the half. So he's just like, honestly, those kinds of interceptions I kind of respect because it's a guy that says like, all right, well, maybe it's an interception, but I'll take a shot at it, even though I know I don't have a good chance because we can go for a touchdown here. So like, he's not worried about those stats. He has had some dicey trying to thread the needle through tight windows types of interceptions, but not all of his interceptions have been that way. There is still an opportunity there. It's not quite as ripe an opportunity as it might look at first blush. Let's see. Okay, last thing that the Browns media wants you to know about the Texans is that Houston has had problems protecting the quarterback. Can I get offended at that? I certainly cannot, because they've had issues protecting the quarterback. I think that the one thing that's been better since CJ came back, and we don't have a huge sample size, is last week they got rid of the ball very quickly in the first half when it really mattered. They did a great job, I think, game planning in that. But they also are using extra bodies in pass protection. Using a fullback helps a lot. And again, that's another one where I know some of you are more upset about the failed runs than I am. But this goes for the Browns too. These teams are mirror images in some respect. Look, Flacco's an older, I don't want to say immobile because he's definitely still very mobile, but you still want to give him that protection, obviously. And they'll use that run game to protect the quarterback. I think with CJ, especially since his concussion, is that if you can just keep the sticks, well, not the sticks moving. If you can keep the line of scrimmage moving forward a little bit while also still using a fullback or 2 tight ends, it just gives you an opportunity to protect CJ that much more. You pay for it in terms of having fewer guys out on routes, but that's all part of finding that balance. And I think that's going to be the key. I think Brevin Jordan and Andrew Beck both getting receiving touchdowns while playing fullback. Now, Brevin was playing tight end when he got the receiving touchdown last week, but he had been playing fullback. So they've got to be ready for those formations when either Brevin Jordan or Andrew Beck is in the game. That helps a lot. That's if teams want to just flat out ignore the fullback in coverage, then so be it. You're gonna get payback for having to keep that fullback into block sometimes. So very fair by Cleveland.com. I'll try to find some. Sometimes it's really good when you find some of these articles by the other opponents. They find blind spots when that you forgot were even weaknesses because you've lived with them so long. All right, let's see. Take a drink here before my voice goes, and I'm going to take some questions. At random, because we've got an hour and a half's worth of questions here. Tiff says, I was cussing when our defense was on the field. I kept yelling, get that MFer. Tiff, weren't you just talking about how you were in church before the game? Man, I miss Bob. I don't know if you're talking about Robert Woods or Bill O'Brien. Let's see. Tiff cussing and praying. Good girl. You got to love CJ's faith and humbleness. Such a young leader. CJ DeMeco, pretty consistent in delivering a message before their speeches. I just want this season to be over. I want this almost overpowered team to get more players and become complete. I got UXG. You got to come see me at the pregame show sometime. If you're going to the game this weekend, come out and see Sean and I in the pregame and identify yourself as UXG Freestyle. I feel like you've got a little bit of an Eeyore outlook on life. There's something I can just sense it, man. It's not bad. It's just that sometimes I worry about people like you because I've got tendencies like that too. You got to fight them. You got to fight. Look, man. This has been like, okay, this almost overpowered team. I understand, and I agree with up to a point, like every single one of your concerns and objections about the team. But you got to just step back and remember where they were at the beginning of the season or where they were the last 2 years. Man, like this is good stuff. Like, you got to enjoy this. Let go of if there's some part of you that's like, well, if you ain't first, you're last, or if it's not a championship, it's a failed season. I don't know what to tell you, man, because you've set yourself on a path to be miserable in just about every situation in life. So just try to do some woosah and do the Mr. Miyagi, the breathe in and breathe out. Look up some breathing exercises on YouTube and just enjoy this for what it is. We could all be dead next year, Who knows? I don't know. I don't pay attention to current events anymore. Goodness. Let's see. Watson has wasted his talent because of his proclivities. He will go down as a could have been. Okay. In terms of Watson, I'm curious to hear what Browns fans have to say about this, because Watson, even as they were winning early on this season, he finished 5-1 on the season. He wasn't playing like himself. He started to look a lot more like a guy that could drive this offense. And I think the biggest thing about Watson that I'm curious to see is that under Bill O'Brien, this was a thing with all of his quarterbacks. I never felt like the quarterbacks had to pay as much attention to detail as they do under other coaches. That extended to the offensive line. I think O'Brien was very good at the strategy of football, was understood a lot about football and the X's and O's. When it came to being persnickety about details and demanding about details, I just never saw it. I flat out never saw it from any of the positions. They were sloppy. And with Stefanski and anybody else that runs a Kubshanistani system, it is all about being precise and making the run look like the pass and vice versa. And I saw that in Deshaun last year. One of my big complaints about Deshaun when he was in Houston had always been he was really lazy on his fakes, like really, really lazy. And you could tell when it was a genuine zone read and when it wasn't. You could tell when he was going to hand the ball off. You could tell when he when he was keeping the ball on a bootleg. It was very obvious from a defensive lineman standpoint that wasn't fooling anybody. And that's just death. That's death to a play. And it's death to a play. So last year with Stefanski, I saw him immediately much crisper on that side of things. The backfield mechanics were way, way, way sharper. And it takes time for that to take root. So I do think if he can stay healthy, he's going to latch on in that system. It's just a matter of getting the reps. And I don't know, beating out Flacco, I guess. But even what are they gonna do? They're gonna Nick Foles? Nick Foles was an anomaly. Nick Foles was a fluke. Nick Foles had a beautiful deep ball and not much else. And he captured when they won with the Eagles. He kind of caught lightning in a bottle there. Where with Flacco, I don't know. I don't know. It's your guys' problem, not mine. I want to see the algorithm ads. Wait, I'm going to tell you which ads are up on my algorithm right now. Myers dish soap. Nothing scandalous there. This is am I my wife's? I've got a Disney bundle for getting a Disney streaming of some sort. Nature's Adderall is taking over the internet. Nature's Adderall, that sounds like ephedrine to me. Nature's Adderall for me has always been caffeine until I discovered actual Adderall. By prescription, damn it. And now I use it selectively. I got issues. Had a lot of head trauma, everybody. If Watson was guilty, then Cleveland would have spent all that money for nothing. Okay. All right. Well, we got to get out of there. Let's see. Okay. Let's see references to the graphic references to it. Let's see. Offense was incomplete, so no judgment on offense. Judgment on offense would be erroneous. Yeah, I'm guessing you're talking about the Texans versus the Browns the last time around. I would agree with you on that one. Let's see. Browns defense hasn't been that good on the road. I know that. I know that's what they were saying leading into the Texans game. They beat the Ravens in Baltimore. All right. I don't think the Texans. This is where the NFL. You got to be really careful out road and home splits because it's such a small sample size. In baseball, sometimes it's kind of random, and that's over the course of 162 games. So they beat the Ravens in Baltimore. So I don't quite go up there. Let's see. We need you to make an appearance on Sauce Sports. I was on there a long, long time ago. Please reach out to me. Browns only ran like 60 yards. And I think you were agreeing with me on that one. The Texans had held the Browns to 1.8 yards per attempt. The run game wasn't the issue. So I'm not that Jonathan Taylor game. I don't want to say it's an anomaly because I do think the RPOs kind of put the linebackers in a mental blender, and that could pop up later on. If the Texans play the Ravens, for instance, that could end up being an issue because they are very effective with their RPOs. And I thought the RPOs put a little too much hesitancy into the linebackers at times, and that's why they were on the a little bit out of position at times. You guys are active, and please don't be offended if I am genuinely picking these at random. I'm just kind of trying to scroll down so I'm not here until midnight. I talked with 2 Browns fans last year, and they're obviously not recognizing the negative in regards to Watson's problems. Before the game last year, I talked to a lot of Browns fans during the pregame show. I would go I like to do that when the weather's nice. When the weather's nice, I'll get out and I'll just just talk to people, ask questions. When the weather's hot in the pregame show, I'm a miserable mess, and I sit in front of the portable air conditioning unit. So I'm guessing it's going to be nice. I'd like to talk to some more Browns fans this week. But last year, it was weird because that was the first game Deshaun was back. And my sense was that a lot of Browns fans just didn't quite know what to think about it. And I remember talking to media members. I was talking to Albert Breer after the game. He and I were walking out, a couple hours after the game to the parking lot together. And he was kind of surprised that there wasn't a more vicious reception by the Texans fans of Deshaun Watson. And the feeling I got, tell me you guys if you agree with this or not. I told Albert Breer, I think everybody at that point was just tired of being a spectacle. Everything about the Texans for 2 years at that point had just kind of been a running joke. And I don't mean to minimize Deshaun's entire situation as a joke, but people looked at the franchise as just such a haphazard mess that Deshaun coming back, there was no part of me that like felt like that there was any finality to it. The Texans were still a mess at that point. And like the chapter hadn't closed, where I feel like, okay, the book is shut on that whole era now. And I still don't know. I think a lot of people, they don't necessarily want to like, roll around in the negativity of it all. It's just a very dysfunctional and bad situation in a lot of ways. Getting sad thinking about it. Let's see. We beat the Titans at their house and our house. We saw Hannah doing the sweeping motion. God bless Hannah. I'm pretty sure Seth would be the best dude to go on a road trip with. He'd have good stories and you'd never be bored. You should. Yes. You're correct. I feel like I would say when I was younger, I didn't know. Sometimes I didn't. When I was younger, I used to be a lot more argumentative about stuff. Like I've learned to let things go, and I used to talk too much sometimes. Where over the years I learned how to listen. So now I would agree with you. When I was younger, I don't think it was always we had to be a perfect personality match to be good on a road trip. But now I'm content to just sit and listen for 2 hours while somebody else talks. So I appreciate that, DeRhino. Let's see. Saw sports called CJ Lightskin and lots. I'm not getting into. Nope. Is there anything at all that we're seeing in Flacco that can benefit us from a professional perspective? Okay. That's interesting. And I wondered, like, because I've been trying to figure out with Flacco, and I think I take that that might be multiple different angles you're asking that, Lori. I think with Flacco, the question I'd have if I were the Jets, especially, or one of those other teams is, okay, what were we missing? Like, why did we not get this out of Flacco? And I think part of it is you got to also, maybe it goes back to, okay, what kind of talent does he have around him and how well is the scheme being run? So I think Flacco right now is in a position where he's got the right skill players around him and he's in a system and in a scheme that's going to protect him and give him options, and he's smart enough because he's a veteran that he knows where those options are going to be. He can check into things. He can do all those things that a veteran quarterback can do. But ultimately, like Amari Cooper, David Njoku, and some of the other weaponry there, they just flat out know how to read coverages and know how to get open. And he's taken advantage of all of that. Beyond that, though, like, I don't know. I feel like he was always more mobile than people wanted to give him credit for. But I swear he's more mobile now than he was 10 years ago. And maybe that's just a matter of whatever he's been doing in the offseason cumulatively over the last few years and having a fresh body. He's able to take advantage of that. I think maybe when an older guy nowadays can get some perspective on things and then also take advantage of not getting hit because it's illegal to hit quarterbacks anymore. It might be as simple as that. It's a really good question. Like, I think that's a study in the offseason that you can, like, GMs will look at and say, all right, like, how do we, if we end up having to play a third or fourth quarterback one of these years, like, how do we figure out how to get something like a veteran quarterback like Flacco to play the way he's playing? And I guess, I think like Kevin Stefanski probably has to get a lot of credit for that, along with all the other skill players. Let's see. Oh, as far as the, I think you're right. We're just ready to close the door and move on. Yeah. Let's see. People wanting to, okay, now people want a road trip. I wonder, let's see. We should, maybe one of these road trips, maybe some like is Dallas going to be here or in Dallas next year? Some game like that, like a New Orleans or a Dallas game or something. We could like leave early in the morning, especially like if it were in Dallas, that's a 3:00 game. Leave early in the morning, have a nice road trip up there. And like go straight to, I'll take the bus straight to the pregame show. And Sean will have to do it with a drunk Seth Payne. All right, let's see. What do you think the key is for us to beat the Browns? Vermec, I'm glad you asked that because that would be easy. Like right this moment, I'm going to give you the generic from the hip response. that I would say first and foremost, limit mental errors, which is a boring ass answer, except just go back and watch some of the Browns highlights from the last game. And it's not so boring. It's more agonizing and awful and painful. The other is you need to figure out a way to get heat on Joe Flacco. And a lot of that is just comes back to Jonathan Grenard and Will Anderson getting healthy and fighting through, like they're going to have to fight through a lot of flack. The Browns have been very good about chipping appropriately, double teaming, doing all that. But the pass rush is big. As far as the Browns defense, I'm more concerned still about pass protection for CJ when he has to hold on to the ball. If you have to max protect, exactly how are you going to get the ball downfield? So the quick passing game and ways to scheme the quick passing game up is going to be a big factor. But I'll make that. I'll put keys to victory out. Let's do that. I meant to do it last week. Hold me to this. I'll do keys to victory by Wednesday this week, because I need to look at their health and everything right now too. I've been so much of just yes, Pendergast is an awesome dude too. Sean and I could both be in the bus and we'll go up and do the pregame right from there. Give me some more keys to victory from you guys, suggestions, and I'll plagiarize you. Let's see. Oh, okay. Thank you. They need to mix up coverage in the secondary and offense. They need to use more screens and more running back passes out of the backfield. Most teams are playing cloud coverage on CJ. Because like at this point, my knee jerk is always like, I want to say establish the run. You can't count on it with the Texans rushing offense. Singletary was awesome the other night in moments when he had to be good, and that was really encouraging, but he still ended up averaging less than 3 yards per carry on the evening. They were committed to the run enough that they could set up the play action. But I do think using the running backs in the passing game, which they've done increasingly, with Andrew Beck, with Brevin Jordan. I think getting Singletary out there is another big one, and mixing it up on the secondary. The only thing about mixing it up in the secondary, which gets scary, is that the mental errors. I think DeMeco's in a spot right now where I think he's really trying to balance mixing things up, disguising, showing blended coverages, with the fact that, man, you go back to this last game and the Texans were banged up. You've got a cornerback who's playing his first snap on defense all season long, and the safety likely makes an error on that. Jalen Petrie likely just even if it's not an outright coverage error, it's an error in judgment given the circumstances, that where Jalen has shown his youth at various times this year. And I'm not trying to pile on Jalen Petrie or anything. They do ask a lot of him in this defense, but that's part of where DeMeco is right now. He'd love to have safeties and linebackers who can kind of swap responsibilities on the fly and do all this really cool and funky stuff that just puts offenses and quarterbacks especially into a bad place. And right now we just can't do it. So I think the illusion of complexity is what you're looking for this week, and just enough disguise, and perhaps enough of, now that you've got enough film on Flacco, where can you upend Flacco? Where can you show the illusion of complexity to where you're not making it too complex for your own defensive backs, but you're throwing something up that Flacco's not ready for? And no more false starting from Laramie also. Let's see. How can we contact you, Seth? Would you be able to come on the stream? Go to my Twitter and DM me there. I think it'd be the best. I have a hard time sifting through my comments. I would tell you, let's have a little chat. Let's have a little chat for a moment about social media. I've been trying to limit my social media use for the past season, really, this season. Mostly just because it's not like an Elon Musk thing or anything like that. It's more just because I realized over the years that when I first started getting into sports media, after I'd been done playing a few years, and I was kind of checked out. But I think John Granado convinced me to get on Twitter, told me I had to get on Twitter, and I would go on with John and Lance every now and then, back in the 15, 60 days. But I guess when I started going on, I think it was John and Sean at that point on 1560. But so I started using Twitter, and I was like really good at Twitter. But over time, what happens is Twitter really, really, really rewards snarkiness. And like I feel like for me especially, it like rewarded all the worst parts of my personality. And then I'm not thick skinned enough like so many of these Zoomers and Gen Xers that like I would get too worked up at times. And for a long time I tried to fight that and act like, well, you know what? I mean, this is the modern world, and you got to be more thick-skinned about certain things. And that's true to a degree. And like personally, I've always been trying to work on being less sensitive. But like, there's a limit, for where's healthy and where's not. So like a combination of me being rewarded for being my snarkiest self, which I get enough of that on radio. Like I get enough of that by talking sports for 4 hours every morning. I didn't want to encourage that part of my personality anymore. And then it leads to more negativity breeds more negativity, and that's where I am. So I'm harder to get a hold of these days than I used to be on social media, but DMing my Twitter is always good, at Seth C. Payne. Good question. Any chance Stingley might follow their number one? I think this goes back to trying to keep things as simple as possible for the younger players. Like Stingley's really, really good playing on the left side right now. And I think that allows them at times to rotate safeties over to the right, and it allows them to simplify things or help out guys elsewhere. But he's not traveling with the best receiver. I don't know if this would be the week that they would do a lot more of it. But I'm okay with that as a strategy, is like that's what DeMeco wants. And it's not like, even when guys travel with the best receiver, it's not like it's 100% of the time. And the other part of it too is, all right, it's one thing if they just move Amari Cooper over to the right side. It's a whole nother thing if he's in motion in the slot or wherever in the interior, and that's a whole different position to play. So I think you got to be careful about thinking that that's the panacea for everything. Because the other thing that happens, remember too, is okay, you have Stingley start following somebody around, then who's playing on the left side? Because if Amari Cooper's in the slot and then you got Steven Nelson over on the right, then you got somebody else on the outside that maybe you don't feel great about on the outside. I could go through all the permutations and computations. I'm not agitating for it the way a lot of other people are, and I get it. But and this is the other one too, Ro. I'm not on Twitter or any of those types of social. Yeah. It does. It's a time like the little screen monitoring stuff. The screen time monitor has helped a lot for me to realize like how much time I used to waste on social media. It's hard, but it's hard because it's my job too. Like there's a lot of times for me to be plugged in on like what's actually going on. I can't wait for news articles to come out. And Google is awesome. They're awesome for YouTube optimization, search engine optimization, but they're horrible for current events, especially in sports. Like if I'm gonna Google something about like CJ Stroud's big game versus like last week or something, I get 29 million responses, only some of which are relevant. Where with Twitter, it's like it's right there. Let's see. Negativity leads to the dark side. Yes, Yoda. Let's see. Spurts is Sauce Sports. I just remember the Sauce Sports. One of the Sauce Sports guys and we got into an argument once back in the day, like when I was on with Meltzer, and I can't even remember. It was about the draft, and I ended up going on ended up going on their stream or their podcast afterwards, and I had a good time. It was like all disagreements. It was kind of silly, and we actually were more on the same page than we had realized. I've become a little bit more of a draft geek than I used to be. Let's see. Harris has been all over the place. Did you see the Cashman regression? Yeah, it's been since the injury, especially. I don't know if he's still feeling the effects from the injury. I thought that DeMeco, when asked about Cashman last week in his press conference, gave a curiously brief answer. Like a lot of times he really takes advantage of an opportunity to gush about a guy. And again, I think the RPOs messed the linebackers up last week. It was a different issue the week before, but the RPOs seemed to be in the linebackers' head a bit. Those guys were kind of really hanging back, waiting to see whether the running back was getting the ball or not, while also being conscious of their pass coverage responsibilities. These RPOs, man, as a linebacker, I get stressed out. I get stressed out when I watch defensive ends try to play the option, like the zone read or old school veer, when every now and then they run something like that, and then I get stressed out with the RPOs with the linebackers because they've got an unwinnable task at times, and that's what the Colts are good at doing. All right, I'm gonna have to get going. You guys have a lot of really good questions. Let's see, different channels. Yeah, I know there was let's see, make an email account for just the Payne posse. I could do that, but administratively, I'm kind of a mess. I can't. You know how many websites I've registered for because I've got a great idea about something. All right, everybody. I'm going to cut this off. It's dinner time, and I'll do the keys to victory. I should just go ahead and do a keys to victory tomorrow, since it's a Saturday game. We got to get ready. We got to get our heads in the game. I've spent too much time just counting up all the awards from winning the last regular season game. Goodbye, everybody.